Online gaming has become the digital playground for millions of kids, and unfortunately, it's become a hunting ground for predators too. If your child plays Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, or any multiplayer online game, this is a conversation that can truly change the way you parent around screens. I welcome you to the Keep Kids Safe podcast, a faith-fueled podcast for Christian parents who want to guard their kids from online and offline dangers. I'm your host, Sarah Panus, and I have over 20 years of experience as a content marketing expert, but I'm also a mom of two that is very interested in this topic of keeping kids safe. And I started going down this path of trying to figure out what I can do to help keep my own kids safe and other kids. And here's what I realized. We are not powerless. There's hope. We don't have to dig our head in the sand because informed adults are the most powerful protection children have. Because when we're smarter and more observant and more aware, we can help guide and protect them in more ways, give them the knowledge that they'll need to keep themselves safer. So on this show, each episode is meant to be bite-sized, not overwhelming, and everything follows my SAFE acronym, SAFE, to see the risk clearly, anchor in God's truth, focus on one simple action, to ultimately empower your family with habits and conversations that build lasting confidence. That's what SAFE stands for as we work to keep all kids safe. So let's dive into today's episode. Okay, Kevin, I am so excited to have you on because we are doing a three-parter with you because you are filled with so much knowledge and so much information. These 3 episodes we're about to record are really just scratching the surface, I'm sure, of what you can tell us about. And so as we do with this show, we start each episode with a Bible verse to help really root us and equip us on what we're talking about. Because today we're talking about online games and the dangers and what we should know about those. And so the Bible verse to start is from 1 Peter from chapter 5, verses 8. And it says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." I'm sure we've heard that one before, and that visual of like this prowling about is very applicable to what we're going to be talking about today. And I think this verse reminds us just to stay watchful. And that includes staying watchful online and helping our kids be aware when they're online playing games. So I would say this episode is definitely a must listen for parents who play games like Roblox, Fortnite, or Minecraft. Okay. Maybe a lot of your ears are perking up right now, parents, right? Because there's a lot of kids that play these games. So you might think your kid is just playing a game, but predators know that these are prime places to start grooming children. I'm joined by Kevin Cronister. He is one of only about 100 to 200 officers for the ICAC task force, and he's an investigator, a veteran investigator with them. And they are sorting through over 36 million child exploitation tips that get reported to ICMIC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. What he shares is going to open your eyes, guys, and empower you with steps to keep your kids safer. So my first quiz, I'm actually doing a quiz a little bit earlier in the episode today, guys, because my first quiz is, I'm curious, ICAC, ICAC. Does anyone know what that stands for? So that's the first quiz question here. I'll give you a few seconds just to think about this. ICAC, ICAC. Okay, it stands, I didn't know what it was either. It stands for Internet Crimes Against Children. Okay, so Kevin, let's start with what most parents don't realize. You mentioned that online games like Roblox and Fortnite are one of the biggest risks today. When I asked you, what should parents know about? Right away, you went to video games. So why are these games such a target-rich environment for predators now?
Typically, and this has only been over the last couple of years that these games have exploded in popularity and to the extent that they are today. But in past years, the danger has been the communication apps, right? The messaging apps or the chat rooms or the places where kids can go and chat with their friends. And then you would always worry about a predator kind of weaseling their way into the chat room and being able to communicate with kids. But chat rooms are becoming a thing of the past. And so where kids are communicating the most now is on these massive multiplayer online role-playing games. So MMORPG. And so this is where millions of kids and adults kind of gather in these different games. And you mentioned them, Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft. And you can communicate with each other while you're playing these games. And when you and I were growing up, when we played video games, right? We would take a cartridge, we'd stick it into the machine, and it would play a very linear, quest based kind of a game or a puzzle game. And there was no communication with the outside world. It was just very much a kind of a sandboxed environment, and you and maybe a buddy could play. But today, it's all connected to the internet, which obviously spans the globe. So kids hop on these games, there's a waiting period, and then they're injected into a game with a bunch of other people who were also in the lobby waiting to be injected into this game. So you never know who your kid is playing with on these games. And they will oftentimes have a chat feature, which is where these predators have started to reach out and build trust and maybe some friendship with kids across the globe. In the past, it was maybe a couple thousand people in our direct community that we would interact with on a daily basis. And so you knew everybody or knew of everyone and could kind of vet people a little bit in terms of who your kid was spending time with. And with these games, you never know. It could be anybody from any country across the globe with all different kinds of intentions.
Yeah, definitely. And I know in the next episode that we're doing and that everyone's going to hear from you, we're going to go into the entire grooming process that
Yeah.
predators follow in detail. So in this episode, we're not going to go into it in detail, but can you just summarize and give us a few quick examples of how predators are like, how do they actually start grooming kids in chat inside these online games? What should parents and kids be looking for?
Typically, it just starts with they get injected into the same game together and they start making kind of innocuous or innocent comments in the chat feature to see which kids are actually going to respond and chat with them. And they start to kind of build trust and friendship by just playing the game and saying, hey, man, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to load back in. Do you want to play again? And then most kids are innocent enough that they're like, oh, yeah, that guy was nice. Sure, I'll play with him. And so then eventually you can create a friend on a lot of these games where you save their username, and anytime you hop on and play, it flags your friends that, hey, so and so is on. And that gives the predator an opportunity to hop on at the same time as the child. So they start to kind of learn when they can gain access to your child when your child is isolated from you. Because as parents, a lot of times screen time is, yes, please go have screen time for a little bit. We're going to clean the house and I got to do some things and maybe
Right.
and so they know that chances are if your kid's playing video games, they're isolated from you. And so that gives them a means of communication where you're probably not necessarily going to interfere. And then from there, once they kind of build the friendship, they'll start doing things like in Fortnite, for example, V-Bucks is the in-game currency. And they'll gift a child V-Bucks or gift them a special item in the game, like a skin or a character. And so then your child starts to feel like, hey, this guy, not only is this guy nice, but like he cares about me. Like he's willing to give me these gifts. And the conversation eventually starts to turn to how things are at home. And what these guys are looking for is a child who does not have a great relationship with mom and dad at home. And so they'll ask some probing questions. Hey, you weren't on last night. What happened? You didn't get in trouble, did you? Oh yeah, I got grounded and my mom took Fortnite away. Oh dude, she sounds terrible. And then what they're trying to do is further isolate the child, right? And then
Mhm.
after all this happens and they have isolated the child from you and then they have become the trusted adult and the cool adult, right? Then they try to move the conversation off of the game to a messaging app or something that is easier to communicate with and maybe end-to-end encrypted like Telegram or Signal, where they can send messages back and forth that maybe your child is able to hide from you.
Whew, okay. So I want that to sink in, guys. Time for our second quiz question today because I want to make sure that that really sunk in what Kevin just said. So the question is, what's one common tactic that predators use to build trust with kids inside these games? I'm going to give you multiple choice on this one. Okay, so is it A, they pretend to be a game developer? Is it B, they give free game bucks or gifts? Or C, they use scary messages to frighten kids? A, B, or C? Yep, it is B. They offer free, I almost said the wrong answer. It's B. They offer free gifts or game bucks to build trust and create obligation. So that's something you can flag with your kids, right? Be aware if someone were to offer you something for free, that's a red flag inside of the game. And this is a source from the ICAC task force insights that Kevin had shared with me, and is unsettling, right? Because kids are so trusting and it's supposed to be just this
Yes.
fun environment, right? So that's the heavy of what's happening, is that we know there are many predators in these online video game environments because that's where the kids are. So they're obviously finding additional ways to interact with them and build their trust. So let's shift into the hope section. What's working? You, Kevin, you've seen the worst of the worst
Mhm.
that's out there, but you keep showing up every day. So thank you for everything you do.
Yeah.
What gives you hope in this work? And what would you say to encourage parents who maybe feel overwhelmed or unsure of, what to do and if they're making a difference?
One of the things that has been most hopeful for me is just seeing the number of parents from our generation that are willing to admit, I don't know enough about this stuff and I need to find out the specifics. And so podcasts like yours are doing a fantastic job of getting this information out there. And so we're kind of fighting fire with fire, right? We've got
Yeah.
this technological development of these games and it's a danger, but then we're also using technology and the internet to fight that by spreading this information as much as we can. And so that's one of the biggest things, is just the education piece. Parents learning that this is even a possibility, so then they're more vigilant. And I would say that the things that parents can do to mitigate this are so simple. That's also a cause for hope, because this is not going to be some big technical thing that you have to do and figure out. It's that there's a very few very simple steps that you can take.
Perfect. Okay, then let's talk action. What are those simple steps? What are those action steps that you would recommend parents take? If we have kids who are playing video games, what should we be doing? What should we be
Sure.
saying?
The first one is to play with them occasionally. I know that sounds crazy. Some parents are like, I hate video games. And I don't blame you. My wife is one of them. But if you can get down on their level a little bit and you can play with them and you can become the cool, fun adult that sometimes plays video games with them, it makes them less apt to latch on to somebody else. Not only that, but by playing the game, you're learning about the game, you're figuring out what you can and can't do in the game, and you're kind of seeing the in-game dynamics for yourself, which is incredibly important. The third thing is to monitor your child's friend list. There's a way on every game that I've come across for you to double check and see who's on that friend list. And there's parental controls that you can set up that will allow you to either approve or not approve friends before they're added to the list. And there's ways for you to shut off the main chat feature on each of these games. Roblox, for example, the chat feature is always up in the left hand part of the screen, and you can go up and you can minimize the chat feature. And what I do with my kids is I say, hey, you're not supposed to be chatting, right? I don't care if you play the game, but you're not supposed to be talking to people. So I minimize the chat feature, and then periodically while they're playing, I just go down there and peek. And if the chat feature is still minimized and it's still closed, then it's a pretty good indicator that they weren't chatting. I've caught my kids trying to sneak around that and be like, oh, I actually know this kid and he's
Mhm.
so and so's brother's cousin. And I'm like, nope, that doesn't work. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Our rule is you don't get to be friends with anybody on the internet that you're not friends with in real life.
Like
And
that.
so so that's a big one. If you don't specifically spend time with this person in real life, and I don't know their family and I haven't visited with their parents, etc., then you don't get to be friends with them on the internet, because it's just asking for trouble. People have tens of thousands of friends on the internet that they don't actually know who they're talking to. And then the last thing that I would say is monitor your kids' in-game currency, because we mentioned that's one of the main ways these predators will entice your children. And if your child comes to you and is like, oh, check out this awesome skin I have, and you're like, I didn't give you any money to buy V-Bucks to purchase that skin. Where did it come from?
Mhm.
Oh, well, Big Joe 3032 gifted it to me. That's obviously a red flag. And
Okay.
so Those three or four are probably the simplest and most effective way to prevent a lot of this stuff. And you and I talked earlier about kind of that 80-20 rule. There's 20% of the things that you do, these small, simple things, are going to give you 80% of the results in terms of how safe and protected your child is. There's lots of other things that are more complicated that you could do, but when you weigh the results, those specific things for somebody who's not super technologically apt, those basic things are going to give you the best results.
Okay, perfect. We'll share the first starting point for all of us, and then maybe down the road we can have you come back and do the more advanced
Yeah.
level for people who are interested in that too. Question for you, because I'm just thinking I have a teenage son and I
Mm-hmm.
have a 10-year-old daughter, and my daughter doesn't play online games really yet, but my son does. And I just want to ask a question that maybe I could see a kid giving as an excuse, which is
Sure.
you can still play the games even though you disable chat feature, right? So if the kid
Mm-hmm.
says, I can't play the game if I can't chat with anyone, is that real or is that fake?
Yeah, no, you can absolutely still play the games without chatting. Fortnite is one of those games where, my kids try to say the game is better when you're chatting because if you're on a team with somebody, you can communicate with them to tell them where you're going and what you're doing and blah blah blah. And my response is usually, bummer, dude. Do you want to play one player or do you not want to play? Because that's just the rule. And I allow them to chat with their friends in real life. They have
People they know.
friends
Mm-hmm.
that people they know, right? So that's another thing that I would offer is like, hey, I'm not saying you can't chat. I'm just saying you can only chat with people that we as a family already know in real life have the same values as us.
Yep, definitely. Thank you so much. Not only for doing this hard work, but also sharing what you know with us so that all of the families, all the parents that are listening here can try to stay ahead of these dangers and just be more knowledgeable. We always talk about this. This isn't a fear based show. This is all about equipping you with knowledge. And so hopefully we can go from fearful or just completely oblivious, maybe in this case, where you're like, oh my gosh, I thought gaming was like a fun time, but there are these like simple steps, like Kevin walked through 4 different tips there that we could do. And so hopefully you feel more confident, easy conversations you can have with your kids of all ages with all the tips that you gave so that parents, you're not powerless. Obviously, have these hard conversations, just bring them up conversationally, get involved in your kids' games, and remember your vigilance is one of the greatest defenses that we have and that we have to protect them. How can people connect with you if they want to know more about this, or what resources should they look at? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, visit www.kidsdigitalhealthhub.com. And on Kids Digital Health Hub, we've got lots of resources, lots of documents, videos, etc., that parents can look at to educate themselves. And we're starting to create online courses for parents and teachers also. And then we also have our own podcast called the Screen Guardians podcast, where every couple of weeks we have episodes that are covering more specific instances of cases that I've worked, and it gives parents an opportunity to see a more in-depth look at each of these different scams and some of the things that we talked about. So kidsdigitalhealthhub.com and the Screen Guardians podcast.
Perfect. I will link to all of that in the show notes too, guys, so that you can click on over. But definitely check those out, especially those resources. I'm so happy that you're making all that for us, Kevin. Thank you so much.